Okay. And we're going to go into a Q&A. I can see on the screen. Yes, Coach is awesome. I have I think there's a link somewhere that I'll try to get over to everybody about his testimony in Congress if you haven't seen it. But it is amazing. He also wrote a lot of the Black Panther comic books. So if you've ever read them or aren't familiar with him, he's done a lot outside of just advocacy. He's a great person to think about. Okay. Thank you. Yes. Are there any questions for me?
Just so you know, guys, if you have a question, put it into the chat, and yeah, we could totally call on you. Go for
I'm
it.
surprised you lasted 6 months. Yeah, it's corporate is weird. It's gifted, wildly creative in many ways. The COVID crisis has been characterized by a trend. Trend is, how are we innovating? So one of the ways that we're innovating right now, so the question, in case anybody, I hope you guys they can see the chat question, right? Okay, so the question is about how are we innovating? Well, one of the things we ended up doing is we have a grant to work with the census, and we created a program in order for the youth and young adults in some of our schools to be youth leaders, to actually reach out to assist with the census. And because they can do this remotely, they don't have to go somewhere in person, they can make the phone calls, they can email their friends and family. We've actually found a way to count that or move them into employment. So this is a summer job for some of those youth where they are participating in the census to not only improve the resources in their community, but also pay them. I mean, kids these days, especially if you're thinking about COVID and the stats that we just looked at, it's hard out there for everybody. So this is one opportunity that we have to employ the youth so that they are making $14 an hour to work with us through the census itself. We also created a COVID relief outreach where we have partnered with the Illinois Department of Human Services, where we provide utility relief, rent relief, food, and resources for testing and medical supplies for people that are in the areas that may not have health insurance. They may be struggling or have lost their job due to the COVID pandemic. And we actually, through our grant, this is a separate program from the other program I just talked about, where we do give rent assistance, utility assistance for like electricity, gas bills, lights, the whole nine. Another way that we encourage is we do have a very large program with After School Matters where we are doing remote learning. We actually have a culinary program in several of our high schools that we work with. And because they have to do it remotely, we're shipping the food to the kids so that they can cook at home with their instructors until they're actually able to come back into school. So very good question. Yes, we do a lot. Mr. Dukes, thank you for an amazing talk. How often are you seeing students suffering with feelings of isolation and depression? Are you providing counseling? Yes. So that's a very good question. We do actually have therapists, counselors, and social workers that work for our organization. And we provide free trauma-informed services for all of the 26 schools that we do work with. It's free for them to receive their trauma support, and especially because you're talking about the areas that our schools are in. These kids come from the not greatest neighborhoods in Chicago, so we do have trauma support services. There have been several instances, unfortunately, where some of our kids have been shot and killed, and whenever that happens, because it does unfortunately happen a lot, we do send our therapists and social workers to work with not only the students, but the student's family for one-on-one counseling if they're not comfortable for group counseling. So yes, we do actually provide a lot of services for them in terms of mental health. Free of charge. Again, we are a nonprofit. We don't charge any of our kids for any of the services that we have. Thank you. Good question. For the students who will be 18 by November 3rd, are you making sure they register to vote? Yes, we have a very large voter registration campaign. Our students are able to work with the counselors in their school to register to vote. Now, those that are turning 18, they are outreached and they are given the opportunity to go and register. We do take kids in large batches, and we also do have voter registration campaigns that go on every year because we encourage our students not to just vote in general elections. We do want them to vote in the primaries for their local council, for everything. We actually also have a program where we do take a group of students by bus down to Springfield to shadow senators and state legislators for the day so that they can learn the process. Chuy Garcia, who is a representative with us, actually went to one of those programs when he was younger, and he has encouraged a lot of his colleagues to do the same thing. So we partner with them to bring our students so that they can learn the legislative process and really figure out why it really is important to vote. It's a good question. I live on the far south side. There are a dozen of teenagers that are living in the house next door, idle on weed, and they have had COVID. Some have emotional issues. They need mentors. This is true. A lot of kids do need mentors. If you do see that going on, maybe volunteer to be a mentor. There are some bad examples, sure, but there's also really good examples of kids that may be on the cusp of turning a leaf. Again, like I said, I've been homeless before. I know what it's like to go, you know what? Forget all this try hard. Maybe I can do something easier to get by. But I didn't, because I did have somebody that was able to speak to me and talk about what options may be out there. So if you do see that, maybe talk to how you can volunteer your time. You don't have to directly contact those students, because that, depending on the setting, they could view it the wrong way. But if they are brought to you through an organization or a school, they may be a little bit more comfortable with talking to you one-on-one when they're separated from their peers. Some people can be considered a bad influence on a kid. So if you can separate them from that, show them what the world can be like, you can move them in a more positive direction. Thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing your story. How can you get involved in the Alternative Schools Network? So there are several ways. Our schools, there's, like I said, about 20 some odd of them in the city. They do not charge the students. Their funds come from the city, the state, federal, and county government funding. So one of the ways that you could do is, if you donate to the Alternative Schools Network, it is a nonprofit. You can put it on your taxes, and we can use that money to increase the education and employment programs that we do have within the school. One of the big ones that we have, or even if you work with an organization, we had somebody from ComEd reach out to our school, and they have a Czech trade training program where they do take openings to teach students how to be line workers. Like I said earlier, college isn't for everybody, so we don't only have 4-year programs. We do have trade unions that partner with us. And a big train, if you're familiar with line workers, they actually make a really good living. We're talking about 70 some odd thousand a year right after you get out of a 12-month training program. ComEd will train our students and give them a job right after they finish the program. Now, it is dangerous. It is a line worker, but it's just an example of people that have heard us speak before and have volunteered that opportunity. So if you are looking to involve, that might be something, if you work for a company that has internships or openings, to give a shout out to, okay? What are some programs, skills, training that could benefit from an advertising agency paid internship, content production, and would you be interested in some type of virtual panel discussion where we could give overviews to our world, the different paths to get here, and a Q&A? Yeah, I mean, so what are some of the program skills and training that could benefit from an advertising agency? Well, we have a lot of coding and design programs in our schools for our students. So if they had, say, an internship available to them when they come out, the way that they could benefit from that would be simply learning what the advertising agency is like, what it's like to work in that industry, and what the requirements are to go into that field and be employable. One of the big things that, you can have all the skills that you want, but unless they have the direction on where to go, what are some specific classes to take or skills that they need to pick up, that's where that internship's going to come in to be a benefit. It's going to teach them what they need to be a little bit better. And then it's also going to have them with a little bit more on their resume, a little bit more experience to put in. Okay. How serious are issues around the digital divide? That might be the best question I've seen. The digital divide is huge. So if you guys are aware of the situation, let's say remote learning is our only way for next fall, right? Now, how many kids do you think on the South Side actually got a computer? We don't think about that because if you come from a school somewhere else, that school probably provides laptops or they have resources like that. These schools don't always have those resources. So the digital divide is massive. I mean, we've given out 4,400 laptops and 1,600 hotspots to households that don't have internet for that exact reason, because there are so many differences between the resources that are available for certain kids and the resources that are available for others. So we do try to do our part on that. Other than that, please email me at cdukes@asnchicago.org. I'm running out of time here, but I do want to field as many questions that you guys have. And if you have any more questions about our organization or how you can help, please let me know. I thank you guys for having me this morning, and have a good day. Take care.